Okay, let's dive in. Today we're looking at something pretty interesting. Why Canada seems to have officially become the #1 spot, the most desired place for international students for 2025.
Yeah, that's a big claim, isn't it? Especially with competition like the US, the UK, Australia. But this isn't just guesswork, right? We've got some solid sources.
Exactly. We're working mainly from an article over at CanadianVisa.org, and they lean heavily on, well, two big surveys from Apply Board.
Ah, right. Their Spring 2025 Student Pulse Survey and the April 2025 Recruitment Partner 1.
That's the one. So our goal here is to really unpack what those sources say are the key reasons. What are students really looking for? What are recruiters seeing on the ground?
So by the end of this, you, the listener, should have a really clear sense of the why Canada's pulling ahead, and what matters most to students planning to study abroad right now.
Definitely. And there's a stat right off the bat that kind of grabs you from that Apply Board student survey.
Yeah, so that over 27% of the students they surveyed picked Canada as their #1 choice.
Over a quarter. Just straight up saying Canada first. That really tells you something shifted, doesn't it?
It really does. So let's dig into those reasons. What's the first major point the sources highlight?
Well, according to the article, a huge piece is how clear and structured Canada's immigration pathways are.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. It's not just about the study period itself, is it? It's about what comes after.
Exactly. The sources suggest Canada's kind of selling a potential long-term future, not just a 4-year degree. The whole system seems geared towards, well, potential residency.
And the big one they keep mentioning is the PGWP, right? The Post-Graduation Work Permit Program.
Yes, that seems absolutely crucial. It lets graduates stick around and get Canadian work experience for up to 3 years, I think.
That's right, up to 3 years. And that Canadian work experience, well, that's often the golden ticket, isn't it? It makes them eligible for permanent residency.
Right, through things like express entry, that point system, or those provincial nominee programs, the PMPs, where provinces pick people they need.
Precisely. And the sources kind of contrast this with, well, maybe some shifting policies or uncertainty in other countries. Canada's offering this clear route: study, work, maybe stay permanently. That gives students a lot of confidence.
You can see why that stability would be so appealing, planning your life years ahead.
Ah.
Okay, so moving on from security. The next huge factor seems to be, maybe unsurprisingly, cost. Affordability.
And according to the student survey data, this is massive, that Apply Board survey. 77% of students said affordability was a major factor. 77.
Wow.
Yeah, it ranked even higher than, the school's reputation is their main concern.
77%. That really hammers home how vital the financial side is.
It does. And the article argues Canada has some edges here compared to, say, the US or UK. Tuition can be lower overall, maybe more scholarships available, and living costs, too.
Especially outside the huge cities like Toronto or Vancouver.
Exactly. The sources mentioned that cities like Winnipeg, Edmonton, Halifax, they offer a much more affordable cost of living compared to major hubs in competitor countries. Students seem clued into this.
So they're doing their homework, finding places where their money goes further. Okay, so finance is key. But they're not just going for cheap, right? The education quality still matters.
Oh, definitely. The sources are clear on that. Canada has world-class universities. The big names like University of Toronto, UBC, McGill, they always rank highly internationally.
Sure, the famous ones. But it's broader than that too, isn't it?
It is, yeah. The sources also talk up the college and polytechnic sector, more career-focused programs. They often get praise for being really practical, good industry links, especially in fields like tech, healthcare, trades. So a Canadian credential, uni or college, it carries weight.
Okay, so quality education check. And the point of that education often is getting a good job. The sources say Canada delivers there too during and after studies.
Absolutely. Another big plus highlighted. Students can work part-time, up to 20 hours a week while they're in class.
Right, and full-time during breaks.
Yeah, and that's not just pocket money, right? It's real exposure to the Canadian workplace.
Gets your foot in the door.
Exactly. And then you have the PGWP again after graduation, up to 3 years to work in your field. The article mentions the job market is pretty open to hiring new grads, especially in tech, finance, environmental stuff.
So it's like a logical flow.
Yeah.
Study, maybe work a bit, then get solid work experience after, which then loops back to potentially staying permanently.
It really seems like a complete package based on these sources.
Which brings us to the last core factor they identify, the actual environment, Canada itself.
Yes. Its reputation for being safe, welcoming. That's pretty well established, but does the data back it up from the student's view?
It seems so. The sources point to Canada's ranking globally for safety, inclusivity, multiculturalism. And that Apply Board survey found over 70% of students felt safe and respected there.
70% feeling safe and respected. That's got to be huge when you're far from home.
For sure. The article highlights how cities are diverse, services are accessible, communities are generally seen as welcoming. And that positive experience, the sources suggest, probably influences their thoughts about staying long-term. Makes sense. And the interest is growing, right? There was a number about application increases.
Yeah, Apply Board saw a 9.5% jump in applications to Canadian schools in 2025 compared to the year before. Almost 10% up.
Nearly 10%. That's significant demand. Are they seeing particular fields booming?
The article mentions things like computer science, data analytics, public health, environmental studies. Really high demand. Schools are apparently trying to expand to meet it.
And the policies we talked about, the immigration ones, they actively try to keep these graduates.
That seems to be a key takeaway from the source material, yeah. Many provinces use their PNPs, the provincial nominee programs, to specifically target international grads. Ontario, BC, they get mentioned for having streams to fast-track skilled grads with Canadian experience into permanent residency. Even smaller provinces are getting in on it.
So that focus on retention, it really cuts down the uncertainty students might face elsewhere after graduating.
Right. It makes Canada look like a really solid long-term bet, especially if your goal isn't just the degree, but also working and maybe settling down.
Okay, so that's the student angle. What about the recruiters, the folks helping these students?
Yeah, the Recruitment Partner Survey.
Yeah.
That was, over 450 recruiters worldwide. They said they saw more students engaging with them early in 2025.
Okay. And what were they saying drives decisions?
Well, interestingly, they noted that places like the UK might score well on sort of surface appeal attractiveness, safety perceptions, but they specifically pinpointed Canada's immigration friendliness and those post-graduation job opportunities as the real competitive advantages right now. That's what's tipping the scales.
Gotcha. So even if other places look appealing, Canada's practical, clear path to work and potentially staying, that's the clincher for students and the people advising them.
That seems to be the message from the recruitment side, yeah. They also mentioned seeing more demand from places like Latin America, Africa, Southeast Asia, regions where students often really prioritize value, work options, and those clear post-study routes, which is exactly what Canada's offering, according to this data.
It really paints a picture of Canada offering more than just, a temporary study experience. It's framed as a pathway for long-term growth, career, maybe even settling down, like the source says.
That's definitely the impression you get from the data. A destination that supports you well past graduation day.
Okay, so let's try and summarize the key drivers here based on the Apply Board surveys and that CanadianVisa.org analysis. Why is Canada #1 for 2025?
Okay, first, clearly, those transparent, structured immigration pathways.
Right.
The PGWP for work experience is huge, and the clear links to express entry and the PNPs for potential residency.
Right. Then #2, affordability. It's relatively more accessible than some key competitors, hitting that huge 77% student concern head-on.
Third, you've got the quality education itself. Recognized universities, but also those strong career-focused colleges and polytechnics.
Fourth, the work opportunities, being able to work part-time during studies, and crucially, that potential for up to 3 years of work after graduation via the PGWP.
And fifth, underpinning it all, is Canada's reputation. Safe, inclusive, multicultural. That feeling of being welcomed and respected that over 70% of students reported.
And all that feeds into that nearly 10% application increase, and the recruiter saying, yeah, attractiveness is nice, but it's the immigration and job reality that's giving Canada the edge.
Exactly. The sources really frame it as, well, Canada isn't just selling a degree, it's selling a potential future. A launch pad for a career, maybe a whole new life chapter.
And the article wraps up suggesting Canada's kind of setting a new benchmark, a standard for global education, by integrating study, career, and settlement so effectively.
Which makes you think, doesn't it, about what international education even means to students today. Is the goal shifting?
It really does. If Canada's model, as these sources describe it, this clear pathway from studying to working to maybe staying, is resonating so strongly, what does that tell us about what international students worldwide are really seeking now, beyond just the diploma? Something to chew on, definitely.